welcome to Everlasting Talk. Hello, this is Everlasting Talk. This is your host, Evaristo Jr. Herrera. Today we're talking about Winston Churchill. This is the Biography Series. Hey everyone, it's been a while since we last saw each other. I haven't done an episode in a couple months. I've been doing other things, with employment and such. But it's good to be back here and talk to you about our biography series with Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was actually the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during World War II and would be an essential part of where the war will lead. He would serve as Prime Minister from 1940 to 1945 and again from 1951 and 1955. He was a statesman, and among other things as well, he's fought in two wars. He's fought in the Anglo-Sudan War and the Second Boer War. Actually, in February 1895, he was commissioned second lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Brigade in the British Army. Among that as well, he would serve many different positions. He would serve as well as he would work for many different both political parties himself. He would be Home Secretary. He would be the president of the Board of Trade. He would be conservative MP. He would be, he would do among other things before becoming Prime Minister, and also the First Lord of the Admiralty. So he did many things during his tenure in the military: Minister of Munitions, Secretary of State for War and Air, Secretary of State for the Colonies, Chancellor of the Exchequer. I can't say that. Exchequer. So he did many different things. So Winston Churchill was very popular. He was actually born on November 30th, 1874 in Oxfordshire to British nobility. His father was Lord Randolph Churchill, was a prominent politician. His mother, Janine, was an American socialite. He would mostly be taken care of by his grandmother, where he would be rebellious in school and be bullied. He was almost killed when he jumped off a bridge, which went ahead and ruptured his kidney. He had unconsciousness and it was not his last brush with death. He would actually apply for the Royal Military College in Sandhurst, but not be able to get in until his third attempt. He was in the cavalry, which he loved because he always loved the military itself, and he always wanted to be part of the military after learning so much about it. Well, actually, his father died in January 1895, soon after Churchill finished at Sandhurst. So around that time, like I mentioned, he was actually commissioned as a second lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Own Hussars Regiment, the British Army, and he was eager to see the military action. So he actually went ahead and went to Cuba and absorbed for the War of Independence that involved the war between the Spanish and the United States. He would, he reveled in the idea of, going to war. He would find himself in India after that, and he would go from there. He would also be very staunch on imperialism and monarchism. He believed that wholeheartedly. He believed that imperialism was very important. To have for the United Kingdom to have all these territories all over the world. He was actually so from 1895 to 1899, he was in the British military. At the age of 25, he actually went to Cape Town to cover the British First Boer, the Second Boer War, and he would actually end up as a POW after his unit got ambushed, and ended up escaping. So from there, he actually he reveled in politics. He loved politics so much. He actually started off, like I mentioned, in the House of Commons as a conservative in 1901, where he would get notoriety and be able to go ahead and unite and lead the liberalists, imperialists like Mr. H.H. Hasquin, he would actually drift away to the left eventually, but he considered it a process to eventually go and become more of a central party, not just be conservative or liberal. And pretty much after that, he would, there was many different things he did. He actually opposed an act on May 1904, which is called the Aliens Bill, which was to curb Jewish migration to Britain. He said it would be, it would appeal to secular prejudice against foreigners and racial prejudice against Jewish people. So he did not want to do it. And after that, but then after that, in 1904, he became a liberal. So he would go ahead and work in a majority and, won a seat there with them. So he definitely he would transfer back and forth between different political parties. After that, he became the president of the Board of Trade. He would go ahead and become Home Secretary. So, and after that, he would be the First Lord of the Admiralty, which pretty much, he pretty much was, in charge of the Navy, Royal Navy Air Service. He used it to, for a way to, keep that going. After that, he was in the military again from 1915 to 1916. He would actually be promoted to Lieutenant Colonel of the 6th Royal Scots Fusiliers, and eventually he would escape death again because there was a large piece of shrapnel that fell on him, and he survived. So eventually he ended up leaving. So after that, he came back from the war. He served Minister of Munitions up to 1919. He served Secretary of State for the War and Air up to 1921. Secretary of State for the Colonies up to 1922. So every other year he would be a different position. And pretty much after that, in 1929, he was like I mentioned, he was pro-imperial and pro-monarchist, and he didn't want to let go of India. He actually did not like Muhammad Gandhi. He called him a faker because he always claimed that Muhammad Gandhi was a lawyer, and he's pretending to be, this man of great stature who's, willing to starve himself for the people. And Winston Churchill pretty much called him a fakir. I don't, that's probably a British term for faker. So he didn't like him at all. He would actually go ahead and they would actually lose a battle in Gallipoli where 45,000 troops were lost. And he definitely was very devastated by that because he was not expecting the British Empire to lose anything like that. So after that, pretty much he would marry his wife until his death at 9 years old. His wife's name was Clementine. They had 4 children. Their children he had 4 of them. He had obviously his wife, and then he had 4 children. He would actually go ahead and when the Nazis were threatening Europe, Winston Churchill would talk bad about them. He actually they knew the imminent threat that was going on with Germans, because they were kind of already knowing what's going on, with the rise of Hitler. But this is before Hitler was even like prominent until his 1930s, late 1930s. And pretty much Churchill during that time, like, he was very, like I mentioned, pro-monarchist. So he did pretty much anything to make sure that India was not gonna declare independence anytime soon. And eventually after that, he would be appointed by Neville Chamberlain in 1938. To head, the foreign secretary, become the head of the foreign secretary, and especially when they noticed there's a way to deter the aggression from Germany that was around the corner. And once the annexation of Austria happened, he was very adamant about being able to defend themselves against German expansionism. That's the only way. That was the only way to stop Hitler. But then Hitler went ahead and invaded Czechoslovakia, and they signed the Munich Agreement in September 30th, 1939, agreeing to allow the Germans to annex that part of Suderland. A way to pretty much appease the Germans to keep them from invading them and anyone else. So pretty much it was. You kind of noticed the tide was turning. Like it was going towards war, and so eventually, when Chamberlain resigned, Winston Churchill became prime minister in 1940, and from there, it's pretty much where he became more famous around the world. The Ministry Department was created. Pearl Harbor happened in December 1941. He would definitely that would definitely be his biggest part. He did so many things to be able to keep his people going. So like he would do speeches. He would do many things like he did a speech on May 13th, was the blood, toil, tears, and sweat speech. It was pretty much a statement. I could pretty much tell you what it is. Like, it pretty much just says that I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. You ask, what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war by sea, land, and air, for all our might, and with all the strength that God gives us, to wage war against the monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. It is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there is no survival. Winston Churchill. So pretty much, he was very adamant about beating the Germans, and with Germany, right on the heels right in the heels of the France, the Battle of France, when the French eventually fell. There's nothing between them and getting invaded by the British getting invaded by the Germans, because now they had France. So the Battle of Britain commenced on August 20th, 1940, where the Luftwaffe would go ahead and start bombing Germany on September 7th. Pretty much to this day, about 70 plus years ago. And there's just bombardment and destroying London and British towns, and enough things would happen where eventually the British will fall. Winston Churchill was very, very strong in his voice, and he would go ahead and actually keep his people going. Churchill actually took advantage of when the Hitler launched an invasion against the Soviet Union on June 22nd, 1941. When this is the perfect time for Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin to sit down and be able to get rid of Hitler and destroy them. But this is actually before the U.S. got in, so the U.S. was still kind of like not anti-war, but once D-Day happened, the United States was full on board, and he actually went ahead and did a joint meeting with Congress. But actually that night he suffered a mild heart attack, and he actually he did not want to go to rest. He actually wanted to continue going. So after that, with everything going on, eventually the Singapore fell to the Japanese. He actually called it one of the worst disaster and largest capitulation in British military history. And after that, there was another blow to the war where the Japanese would invade Burma in December 1941, and Rangoon actually fell in March 1942. So it's getting more and more severe for the British to actually have a winning advantage, because not only were they getting bombarded by the Germans in their own land, they were losing their, territories in Asia, and and that's what Winston Churchill was for imperialism. So for him losing his properties was very, very hard. And actually 35,000 of his troops surrendered in Singapore, which is a blow to the military might. And they were just struggling to keep going. They would do the meetings with. He would eventually meet up with FDR from the United States, Joseph Stalin from USSR, and it would be strategizing ways to finally beat Hitler. Eventually, the North, Churchill met up with them. They actually organized the invasion of Sicily and Italy, which eventually, you know, got um, got Mussolini out of power. D-Day occurred on June 6, 1944, with the invasion of Normandy. Then, pretty much after that, the 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 Russians, or the Soviet Union, was coming from the right side, going into Germany, and eventually Germany lost VE Day on May 7, 1945, and on May 8th, Hitler would declare commit suicide, and that was the end of the war for the Europeans. He did many different things. He would actually, like I mentioned, he ran again. He ran after the war. Once the war was ended with Europe and the Japanese, he would run again. He would run again and lose, but then he would, like I mentioned before, he won in 1951 and 1955. Actually, he died. He passed away on January 24, 1965. He was, of a stroke, and he was very influential. Although many people say that he was kind of like insensitive, he didn't like certain people, he was loud, brash, but he was very, very influential to keep the British from falling, and losing all hope. Actually, he's been in many different depictions throughout since then. He appeared in a biopic called Young Winston, 1972. In 1981, it came out a movie called The Wilderness Years. The Gathering Storm in 2002. The Darkest Hour, starring Gary Oldman, and The Crown, which is on right now. He's being played by John Lithgow. So, since then, there's been always a generation of people knowing who he is. Definitely a man of many influence. Although he was very controversial, he was a man of good, like I mentioned, good influence. And let me see. Let me check what else. Let me check what books was good. The Darkest Hour, if you want to see a movie, that's definitely a good movie to watch. There's also books called My Early Life, The History of an Englishman, The Birth of British, The World Crisis, Marble and Its Lifetimes, Triumph and Tragedy. There's those different books as well. So definitely recommend these kind of books. If you want to more know about them, I definitely look them up. Look up his speeches. I definitely enjoyed many of his speeches. The last couple decades, especially that Blood, Toil, Sweat, and Tears. That was definitely very good. I definitely look up that on whatever platform you use. And that's Winston Churchill. And thank you so much for listening here to Everlasting Talk. If anything, we'll definitely see you at the next episode. It's good to be back. And I'll continue doing more episodes of more people in history. And follow me on my social media on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And I thank you so much and have a good night. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching the end of this episode of Everlasting Talk. Follow us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Thank you.